friends, welcome to the Teresa Lusk Show. I'm your host, Teresa Lusk, and I have a wonderful guest with us today, Byron Henry. And Byron is a partner in the appellate law section of Sheep and Stone, with his practice focusing on the areas of business litigation and civil appeals. He is board certified in civil appellate law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. Mr. Henry has been selected as Texas Super Lawyer in Appellate Law by Thomas Reuters every year since. Byron has filed papers and briefs in numerous state and federal trial and appellate courts, including the Supreme Court of the United States and the Supreme Court of Texas and more. My friends, I want to welcome our guest, Byron. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Teresa, for having me. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. You know, our guest is going to talk to us about a really hot topic right now. Excuse me, our Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton. So you're an attorney, you've dealt with these kinds of cases, you have represented him before, not in this case particularly, but you are his attorney. So talk to us a little bit about what is your professional opinion right now about what's going on with this lack of transparency that's been seen in this impeachment trial?
Well, of course, you have to divide this into the political and the legal.
Okay.
It's a little bit of both. Impeachment's always a political act, as we saw with President Trump and his two impeachments when he was in office. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about just the legal precedent for it, the impeachment itself, not looking forward to the trial in the Senate, but the impeachment process itself really didn't follow any legal precedent or the way they'd been done in the past. Word is that about 10 people in Austin knew about it. It was the General Investigative Committee and a few other members, including the Speaker of the House, and they basically conducted a clandestine investigation, got some statements and whatnot. They had a 2-hour press conference, not really even a hearing, where they just regurgitated what they had heard from others to the committee. The committee voted out impeachment articles, and the House had 48 hours to read them and decide whether or not to impeach the duly elected Attorney General of Texas, who, by the way, had just won a resounding re-election the year before.
Wow, that is absolutely devastating. Definitely, I think it hurts the morale of our nation, of our state, things going on right now. What do you suspect might happen with this?
Well, the rules just came down from the Senate. They just wrote the rules for the trial. They are roughly relatively transparent, except for pretrial motions and deliberations will all be secret. So we won't get to see any of the deliberations of the senators and what their views are, unlike in other impeachment, in the federal government, where you get to see the debate on the Senate floor. So, but otherwise, the rules are basically for a relatively quick trial. This is the last time we had an impeachment. The trial took like 4 months. They've given the prosecution and the defense like 24 hours aside of total time to prove their case and defend it. So that's a relatively streamlined process. But once again, because it's only partially legal and the rest is political, it's hard to tell what's going to happen. Clearly, General Paxton has his conservative fans in the House and the Senate, and also his detractors. So we'll have to wait and see how the evidence plays out before the Senate.
Wow, my goodness. So what do you make of the news that Angela Paxton won't be able to vote in the upcoming trial? Does that mean that the people of the Senate District 8 are losing a vote?
I think so. I mean, I think it's sad. I think that I know the Rules Committee were trying to make a compromise that was fair, to not recuse her altogether, allow her to be present and not voting. The state law requires all senators to attend, so she was always going to have to attend. But I think it's unfortunate that in a Senate district like Senate District 8, where General Paxton hails from, that's his home district, that we wouldn't have a vote as to whether or not to basically overturn the results of an election and remove the Attorney General from office, that basically all of the citizens in Senate District 8 have no say or no vote on that matter. I think that's a shame, and I don't think it was required. I think the Constitution is vague on that issue, and if the Senate would have wanted to let her vote and represent her constituents, it certainly could have.
You know, this really hurts the future of our state politics and the governing of it all. What do you have to say to that to our viewers? Because, you know, we love our state. I'm a Texan, born and raised here. You are too, you know, as you mentioned earlier before we started the show. What do you have to say to our viewers? Because one of the things that I love to do is educate our viewers and help them be able to formulate an educated response so that they know, what's my part, what's my action, what can I do? Is there anything that Texans can do to support Paxton or to come against some of this unfairness that's happening right now?
Well, with respect to the impeachment trial that's coming up, there certainly are things you can do. First of all, despite the misgivings of some other representatives, most of our senators and representatives appreciate the grassroots. They can't win without the grassroots, those countless hours, whether it's donations or time or door knocking or block walking, phone banking. And so they really need to know that the grassroots are behind their actions and whatnot. So although the evidence should ultimately control the disposition of a trial, because it's a political act, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the constituents calling their senators, whether it be Senator Paxton, who doesn't get to vote, but she is part of the process, as well as all the other senators, especially if you're their constituents, and telling them how you feel about the rushed and basically non-transparent impeachment of Attorney General Paxton. And from the political side, it really exposes something we've had in Texas for a while, but it just hasn't been this open, and that is just the rift between, and I don't like to use labels, but just a really conservative group of movement conservatives that really want to use government to change, to roll back a lot of the progressive advancements they've made in prior years during the Obama administration and also during Biden's administration, and others that are conservative. Don't get me wrong, they're pro-business, they're low taxes, they're generally small government, but they are not the conservative crusaders or true believers that a lot of the grassroots are. And there's really a rift there, and the House of Representatives is a microcosm of that. Half of the Republicans are conservatives, if that, and the other ones are more go along, get along with everyone else, establishment type conservatives, and you can't see that anywhere more clear than in the impeachment of Attorney General Paxton.
Well, why is that happening, Byron? That's really concerning as a Texan, and looking to see, because Texas is extremely conservative historically anyway, and you see this happening now. Why? What's really going on when you look at it closely?
Texans are generally independent, and politically we are conservative, but we're generally not considered activists. So if you see a national issue come up, Texas is rarely the first one to tackle it. We're more reflective, contemplative. We like to see what other states do, and it just, even though we are conservative and we are a Republican state, clearly a red state, solidly, at least for now. It's just, we don't rush into things. We have an independent streak about us where we are very leery about government generally. There's a libertarian streak in a lot of Texas conservatives, and that libertarian streak makes us very cautious about using the government to pass laws to further our agenda, because those same government, if it flips hands, they can use the same levers of government to infringe on our freedom. So I don't think Texans like to rush in and ask the government. The reason you can tell that is look at the kind of laws we passed this time that were conservative victories, repealing like DEI in schools. In other words, that had already happened. And so we had to do something to just take it out. We didn't pass affirmative laws putting in conservative government. We are just doing things to remove what has crept in. And so that reactive type of conservatism has been the hallmark of Texas politics, and grassroots activists are frustrated with that. They're like, if we're going to get beat over the head when the Democrats are in control and the left is in control, we need to beat them over the head when we're in control. And that just hasn't been comfortable for conservative Texans for a long time. And we're finally learning our lesson that if we don't beat someone over the head with our politics, we're going to get beaten.
I've heard quite a bit of conservatives actually saying that. They're really responding and reacting to everything that's going on right now. So the Attorney General was easily reelected to a third term in the midterms, but a recent poll from the Texas Politics Project finds half Texans polled believe the House was right to impeach Paxton. What are you hearing as far as public opinion on this case?
Well, that poll doesn't mean a whole lot because it includes people that didn't vote, and it also includes everyone on the left and the 38 to 40% of Democrats that identify in Texas as well. So I think politically conservatives, especially Republicans, are lined up almost universally in opposition. You've seen more party resolutions at the county level, not just party resolutions condemning the process without coming out pro or for General Paxton or the merits of the allegations, but just the process. You've also seen them be unanimous. And if you follow Texas politics, especially local politics, you can't get unanimity on the color of the sky in a lot of local parties, but you've gotten some unanimous resolutions in his favor against the process, and that says a lot about how the people that matter in the Texas political landscape, at least the grassroots, feel about this impeachment.
Wow. Well, so the trial begins the day after Labor Day. What are your thoughts on the timing?
Well, I think it's relatively soon, considering that the preparation of a case for fewer articles of impeachment back in the 70s for a district judge took months to prepare and months to try. Wow. So the idea that you're going to prepare your witness list and your trial in 2 months and then try it in 2 weeks seems a bit far-fetched to me, and a bit hopeful that the Senate. So it either is a fast track to an easy conviction because it's already set that way, and that's just the way the politics are running, or it's a fast track to acquittal because I'm not sure how managers could make the case for 20 articles of impeachment in 24 hours. That's literally an hour per article of total evidence, and it seems to me to be very difficult to make that case. But we'll have to wait and see how it actually plays out on the floor, how it's actually going as we watch it.
Very interesting, because I've heard conservatives that were very concerned about them delaying the trial. They were but you're speaking as an attorney, and you're saying this is way too fast. What would have been a reasonable time frame?
Well, just speaking as a lawyer, if I'm defending a case, I need to see the information. If it's a civil case, you do what's called discovery, which means you ask the other side for all their documents, all their witnesses, you take some depositions and see what they're going to say at trial, and you start preparing your case. Here, there's no pretrial discovery, there's no depositions or anything. Even in a criminal case, you would get to see the prosecutor's file. You'd get to see who their witnesses are and what statements they've made, and we're hopeful that that will still happen in this case. But the idea that you can get all that information and prepare a trial on 20 articles of impeachment, which is basically like 20 charges, it seems to me very difficult to reconcile. Now, I would say politically, it's awesome that it's going to be fast. We need an attorney general that was elected back in office. He's suspended right now. The sooner the better that he gets back to work. So from a political standpoint, you're like, let's have that trial, let's get the acquittal, let's get him back to work.
Wow. So what would be the reason, do you think, that those who are pushing and who pushed for the impeachment, what was their reasoning for setting the trial so fast? Is there a way to kind of put him in a bad predicament if they do it sooner than later?
I'm not sure it's intentionally to put him in a bad predicament from the Senate side. Obviously, the people that push the impeachment in the House are not looking out for General Paxton's best interest. But I think the rules package and the scheduling of the trial is a compromise. It's obviously not perfect. You got two sides to everything trying to get what they want. So I think it's a compromise. I think it's relatively fair. I just think it's fast from a legal standpoint. Okay. But I don't think that they're trying to pull a fast one and strangle, make it where General Paxton can't defend his case at all in this case. I just think they're trying to get a fair, transparent, relatively transparent process that's done. Plus they have special sessions coming up. So the Senate actually has work to do. So they're thinking we can't take 4 or 5 months to do this trial because we also have property tax relief, which we never received, even though there was a $32 billion surplus, and we never got votes or anything on school choice, which was a governor priority. So we still have major things to be decided in special sessions. So I think they're thinking of that as well.
Okay. What are some other things that the public should be aware of that I'm not asking so far? Because this is a time to educate our viewers and really fill them in on what does the ground look like for Texas in the future. As I was researching Ken Paxton, and I saw a lot of similarities with what's happened to President Trump and just the politics behind it. What are some things that our viewers, that you could educate me and our viewers on regarding this?
Well, remember that the Attorney General is elected statewide independently. So unlike the federal government where the Attorney General works for the President, our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, at this point, does not work for anyone else but the people. And so that's agitating to some people. Okay. He's not part of the government. He is, but he's his own executive branch of the government, and he's the head of it, so he doesn't answer to the governor, he doesn't answer to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, doesn't answer to the speaker, and you can ruffle some feathers when you go your own way and listen to the voters. I don't think there's any dispute that General Paxton has been the most effective Attorney General in history, probably also the most most conservative attorney general we've ever had, and that's present company accepted for Governor Abbott, who was the attorney general for multiple terms as well. Mm-hmm. So that rubs people the wrong way, obviously. But I do think people should know that he's made enemies, Republican enemies, by not going along. But mm-hmm. the other thing is that there's a statute we have on the books that only applies to removal. It does not apply to impeachment, but it says a state officer cannot be removed for conduct that may have occurred prior to the most recent election. Mm. Meaning the Senate is going to have to wrestle with whether or not they are actually going to consider conduct that predates all of his elections, by the way, like the securities issue that's been hanging out there and some other issues. Or are they going to basically obviate the will of the voters and say, we know all the voters knew about these other things and still elected him in Republican primaries and general elections? Or are we going to take it on our own self and say, we know better than the voters, we'll decide whether or not he should be removed from office? And I think everyone should take that into consideration, that nothing in these articles happened after the last election in November of 2022.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the voters spoke. I mean, I think that the people who go out to vote are generally people who do their research, their homework, and even if you see some sort of accusation, which obviously every politician has some sort of accusation behind their name, yet the voters spoke loudly. Correct?
That's correct. He won the primary by over 30 points against a well-funded and very recognizable George P. Bush, who is it's not like he was underfunded or not known. Right. And he was also an elected official. He was land commissioner and he was elected, so he was a popularly elected official that General Paxton defeated handily in the primary. And then, of course, he won the general election soundly as well, along with Lieutenant Governor Patrick and Governor Abbott. So you talk about threats to democracy. That's in all the progressive papers, like President Trump's a threat to democracy, or the conservatives are a threat to democracy. What could be more threatening to democracy than basically holding a hearing to decide whether or not the person the voters put in office should be removed from office for things that they all knew about and were out there before the election?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely unfortunate, but it really shines the light on what's going on. And I hope, Byron, that people will pay attention and wake up and look at that this is going on across our nation, by the way, would you say? I mean, this is a reflection of everything. Talk to us a little bit about that, how this is a nation issue, not just a Texas issue.
Well, a few decades ago, this wouldn't happen. In other words, we did not weaponize DAs and U.S. attorneys, and just because you had the majority in the House or Senate, you could impeach whoever's in office. That's not the way business was done. That's why they're so rare. The political process or the criminal process had not been weaponized. Now what we're seeing is rogue DAs in the criminal process indicting Republicans, basically. A lot of times for admittedly stretching the law or the statute to cover their conduct or whatnot, like what happened in New York. And so that's new, or at least to me. Mm-hmm. It's new that we would be, they indicted Tom DeLay, that was overturned. The left indicted Governor Perry when he was in office, that was overturned eventually as something that he should have been indicted for. But they figure that if they do that, they win either way. The damage it causes, both from money and distraction and public, just the public view of someone that's been indicted, no matter how political you think it is, generally is not positive, obviously. And if they convict, great, they're out of office. If they don't convict, they've still done the damage. And I think that's unfortunate. And people have called for Republican DAs to start indicting Democratic officials. I mean, I think they should if there's a legitimate crime there. But I think we should be very careful responding in kind to things that we have been decrying as, weaponization of politics, weaponization of the criminal law. We should be very careful, because that is not something that I think that's something we should put an end to, as opposed to do ourselves.
I love that you're saying that. I hope that more governmental leaders would take that position, but on both sides for sure. I hope that we can have some Democrat liberal, representatives who will also stand for that. I believe that there are still some people out there, Byron, who do have this moral, compass that can go, okay, we're not going to respond in kind because we want what's best for our nation, for our country, for our state. And so that's absolutely important. I can imagine how stressful this might be for, the Paxton family. And, I've heard a lot of great things, about, Attorney General I've not met him myself, but I've heard a lot of great things. What are some positives that you know about him and his wife?
Well, I can tell you that they're true believers in the conservative cause, both dedicated pro-life, which basically they spent most of their career before Roe v. Wade was overturned, attempting to either limit or eliminate abortion in Texas and nationwide. Mm-hmm. And so that's important from a conservative standpoint and just from a moral standpoint with respect to the abortion issue. And I'm pleased that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe. It took a lot of the battles off of our plate. There are still battles to fight. Obviously, the battle is not completely won. Mm-hmm. The left is still pushing in other states. But I would say he's very dogged, and he does not bow to political pressure, meaning if he thinks that he's right about a lawsuit on the border, win or lose, he's going to file it, even if it ruffles feathers. He listens to the people. One thing that's I've always admired about the Attorney General is he works for us. He does not work for donors. He does not work for establishment politicians that have been in office. He doesn't work for Washington. He is rogue in the independent sense, meaning he doesn't take orders from anyone else. His marching orders don't come from some organization or whoever funds him and whatnot, and that's refreshing today. And I think that's one of the reasons that despite some of his legal issues that have been dogging him with the basically some Republicans and progressives attacking him at every turn, I mean, I don't think he's ever gotten good press. So the fact that he's managed to win as much as he has, I can't remember the most positive article I ever saw about him is when CNN admitted that he was so effective that a lot of the Biden policies go to Texas to die. And it had a picture of the Attorney General in his office. It said, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, where Biden's policies go to die.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
So as a backhanded compliment from CNN, actually is the most positive thing I've ever read about General Paxton.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, this show is about faith as well. You know, I'm a woman of faith, and you know, I just pray that whatever needs to happen for this state and for this family, for Ken Paxton and Angela Paxton, you know, our representatives, I pray that everything goes well. I want to hear more about more government officials who rise up and do the right thing in this season, Byron. You know, I really feel like it's important, even for those of you who are watching right now, you know, it's important to pray for our state and our nation, even as small as your city, your county. You know, a lot of people say, well, why pray? You know, things are going to happen anyway. Well, maybe so, but you will do your part to stand up for what's good and what's right. And, you know, I have this thing that if we're going to listen to something, we need to research as much as possible. So while there are a lot of accusations against the Attorney General, I went and did my own homework, and I saw some amazing things that he's accomplished. And I thought, well, this makes sense. It makes sense to why he would be going through this, you know, and so it is our job. For those of you who are watching, it's our job to do our homework. Wouldn't you agree that it's time for Americans to do our homework? Absolutely, and for the Paxtons, General Paxton needs your prayers. Their whole family are Christian brothers and sisters, and they are very courageous. But in politics, being courageous has its downside, and that is if you step out, you're likely to be the first one to get hit with the stones and whatnot. So they have put themselves out there, both individually and as a family, to represent us and lead us. And so the least we could do is do our homework, learn everything we can, and pray for them. Pray for them as important leaders and carrying the cause of conservatism forward and defending our freedom. I mean, that's what Senator Angela Paxton says, that, you know, her number one goal is to protect individuals' freedom from the government, and Ken Paxton does that every day when he files lawsuits against the Biden administration, whether it be for overregulation of businesses or being overrun by illegal aliens at the border. Amen. You know, I have this thing, until you've been falsely accused of something, you learn. There's something about being falsely accused. You just learn how to do things differently. You learn how to do your homeworks, you know, and always remember there's two sides to a story, right? There's two sides to a story. And we'll just see how this plays out. But you've been such a pleasure to have on. Thank you for all the education and information today. How can people find you? Our firm website is www.solidcounsel.com. That's SOLIDCOUNSEL.com. You can find me there. Awesome. Well, Byron, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure.
My pleasure.
And for those of you who are watching, please go find Byron Henry. He is a man of wisdom and understanding, and we can learn so much. My friends, thank you so much for watching the Teresa Lusk Show today. God bless.